Shalom Chevra, Rav Matt here again. Let's learn some more Zeronim together. Today we're learning the piece that Rav Kook wrote called Chacham Adif Minavi. Loosely translated, a sage is greater than a prophet. As always, I hope I do Rav Kook justice. There are layers upon layers of his meaning. I do not pretend to understand all of the depth of what Rav Kook is trying to express, but maybe we can peel back some of these ideas in order to get somewhat of a deeper understanding. So first and foremost, the title, Chacham Adif Minavi. This is actually a phrase taken from the Gemara Bava Batra, taken from a verse from Psalms, that Navi Levav Chochma, that a Navi has the lave of a Chacham, of the heart of a wise person. So if a prophet has the heart of a wise person, what's being compared to what? It looks like the lesser is compared to a greater. The lesser prophet is being compared to the greater Navi. The greater Chacham. So Chacham, Adif, greater, Minavi, than a prophet. Now, I like to use these words and maybe modernize them. And let's use the word Chacham more as a word that maybe we're more familiar with, we can relate to it. A Chacham is a scientist, is a thinker, is a doctor, maybe the economist. And the Navi, maybe the Navi is a dreamer, the futurist, the one who has the vision, the plans for what's going to be. That, I think, is another level that we can use to kind of understand this. And we'll see how well this title applies to the piece that Rav Kook is about to teach us. So let's get into it. It starts off by explaining that there are artists, musicians, maybe even comics within society, and they're very good at pointing out maybe what's wrong with society. And so they are very good at pointing out the problems. But the intellects, the scientists, the thinkers, the doctors, they fix the problems. The engineers, they fix the problems of society. So we see a little bit of this duality, as it were, maybe between a prophet and a sage, between the visionaries, the creatives, the artists, and the scientists, the thinkers. Maybe call them the fixers. He explains that a prophet, the visionary, will often be able to understand the general, maybe, negativity that's happening within society. He'll be able to kind of like pinpoint that flow and where society is heading, which is definitely a necessary skill to be able to look to see where you're going. However, coupled with this, creative mind, coupled with this visionary, is a sense of the general. And sometimes the specific details are very hard for someone with such a mindset to grasp. And so, Rav Kook explains that negative things here and there start building up, start coming together. Details, instances. And as they come together, that kind of creates this wider picture that the prophet, that the artist, that the greater visionary is able to understand. But as they come, the small little problems, he doesn't necessarily grab that so well. Now, counter to that, we have mitzvot. Mitzvot are the small little positives, the small little, godliness that we can infuse into the world to help balance and purify the negativity that we have. And then we see that these things kind of maybe can oscillate and balance each other out. The worst thing that can happen is that all these negative things gather into a vessel of some sort, into a receptacle, into an area, and on account of that, there's a bigger destruction, and that ultimately leads into a destruction of the heart for man, which ultimately pushes God away from the world that we're in. pushes God away, maybe in a spiritual sense. Obviously, God is everywhere, but as it were, where there is evil, that is a subtraction or a perceived concealment of God. So as those details kind of like come together, the visionary has a hard time finding that. Matter of fact, the only visionary, the only prophet who saw the interplay between, let's call it the macro and the micro, was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was able to find that balance and understand how the general flow of things and the course and the visions kind of interplayed with everyday details and nuanced instances, and how that interplay affected the larger thing. But there is nobody like Moshe. And in the world that we live in, we do not have prophets. They're non-existent. We don't have the visionaries the way that we may once had. So, for better or for worse, we're stuck with the thinkers, the scientists, the economists, the engineers, the doctors, to fix the problems. And they're very good at identifying all the details, all the nuance, the micro level that we operate on, and how to fix things like that. Now, what can come from such a mindset is an uber focus and hypersensitivity on the details. And for some of us, details can be very overwhelming, and they don't always have that heart. They don't always have that feeling. Now, this is really me speaking here, but I think Rav Kook is highlighting this. Now, what Rav Kook says is, after a lot of time, b'meshach zman harav, nitgaber esek hachachamim al esek hanavim. It soon came that the chachamim and the ones who were thinking about the details, they overcame, as it were, that mindset of the Nevi'im. It's interesting. We do know that there used to be prophets the way we think of prophets, not just this visionary, this the ones planning for the future that I'm using today, but actual prophets. And over time, what happened? They kind of petered out, and what was left? The chachamim, the sages, the rabbis. So those precursors to scientists and engineers and doctors and thinkers, they overcame, and the prophecy was lost, as it were, which means to say the understanding of the macro, the wider view of things was completely lost, and we were left with the details, focusing on the details, swallowed the larger idea. And so it will be at the end of days. Shematz michat mahalach shivat or hanavua tatchil lahofia. It will soon start to shine. It will soon start to spread. It will soon start to be seen. The light of the prophets again. And maybe that's kind of the time that we find ourselves in right now. Rav Kook ends quoting some psukim here and there, some verses here, explaining that a navi, a prophet, a visionary, is the one who has chesed at his root, who has tzedek. Chesed is kindness, tzedek, righteousness, and he is b'shamayim. The chacham, the scientist, the rabbi, he focuses on emet, truth. He focuses on shalom, which is peace, and ultimately he is ba'aretz, the land. And this is the dichotomy, as it were, shamayim va'aretz, tzedek v'shalom, chesed v'emet, chesed, kindness, versus what is true, and then shalom, peace, against what is right, justice, and then shamayim, what is heavenly, to what is aretz. And he says that at the end, we're going to go back to a state of Moshe Rabbeinu. V'nishmato shel Moshe tashuv lo'ofiya be'olam. The soul of Moshe, the one who knew how to balance these two things, will come back into the world. Just to quickly recap, we explain here that we have this duality between the thinker and the visionary. And the thinker is very detailed oriented. The visionary is very wide. It's an interplay throughout history. And although at one time the visionary had, as it were, succumbed to the thinker, and details became the uber focus, at the end of days, we're going to find a restoration of that, and there will be a balance. I hope you enjoyed learning. Love to see you again.